Good evening.
Good evening. How are you going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good.
I have a much better setup tonight, hopefully.
I was going to say, how's the old interwebs?
Man, so for those that don't, well, I find when shows talk about they have technical difficulties, it always bothers me because I just think you're a show. Like, how can you be having technical difficulties? It's not like we're at episode 99 now. I mean, how are you having it now?
Yeah.
So for those out there who are interested, my Mac that I've been using forever is a 2013 Mac, which is now officially no longer supported, which is why all of this is happening, because I'm having to come up with these different solutions. And I just couldn't get it to work last week or last episode. I don't know what it was. But anyway, it sounded like you guys had a really good show.
Yes.
One that I missed out on. Julian, it was quite funny because normally when I edit the podcast, I listen to it back, what I've already listened to. So there's a lot of, I'm just checking to make sure there's no blips. But I got to listen to it for the first time, editing it. And it was really good. Julian is an amazing speaker. And right at the end, when he talked about his podcasts, I went, now it makes sense. Because he was a fantastic speaker.
Yes, it was good.
Hey, Bryan, how's it going? I assume he can't hear us.
Oh, wait.
There we go.
He can't.
Something's happening on that end.
Oh, good old Australian internet.
We should all just move down there. Hey?
Yep, got you now.
Yep,
So,
running. Right.
You're all good. Good. So, how's everyone's fortnight been?
Busy.
Yeah. Any progress on the shop?
Oh, no, don't ask. Nothing. Haven't heard a word from anyone. So.
Oh.
Just is what I haven't heard from the rep since the slab was poured, which is weeks ago.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know if I told you. Maybe I can't remember when it was. Maybe the day
It would have been a month ago that we spoke last.
The day the slab was poured, it was either maybe the day before we did a podcast, maybe the day before, and I was saying like it was gonna be done.
That's right.
But before they'd even finished pouring the slab, I got an email with the bill for it. It was like, man, these guys, I mean, obviously want their money, but come on, you're not even finished yet.
Yeah.
It's the same contractors that are doing the erection of the shed as they're doing the concreting.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, everyone's in the same boat. They need cash, and they were held up big time as well. But come on, finish the job.
Yeah. I've mentioned him before, Scott Turner. He's just recently finished a kit shed build.
Yeah.
That's up in North Queensland, and he was caught out by the company that was doing the shed. It was a kit shed, pretty much the same deal, I reckon, as yours, Joe.
Yeah.
And the after sales service, because they were missing some parts, he said was horrific. And he says everyone he's talked to, it's always the same thing. And not to label all kit shed companies, because I'm sure there's some good guys out there, but a lot of people he spoke to have had very bad experiences where they'll get you in the door. Once you've got, given them the money, then there's just no service afterwards. And who do you call?
Yeah. Yes, I could see it going that way, but fingers crossed. It's just see how we go.
I just waited nearly 3 months for a pair of sauce hinges, if that makes you feel any better.
For a pair of what?
Sauce hinges.
Oh, really?
Oh, sauce,
Yeah. 11 weeks.
Jesus.
Yeah.
It's as bad as trying to find some plasterboard.
Not quite that bad. Not quite that bad. Oh, it's good to have you back, Robin.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I felt like I really missed out on the show, and it feels like it's been a long while since I've spoken to you guys.
Yeah.
talking about jib board or jib rock or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I've been getting into Scott Brown's videos quite a bit lately.
Okay.
And I just enjoy the way he puts them together.
Mm-hmm.
They're very cool. And in this last video of his, he had a portable hand planer, a battery-powered portable hand planer. This thing was honestly the size of like a sunglasses case.
Oh, really?
And he was using it to trim up studs to get them coplanar before putting sheets on. And it was just the most amazing tool.
I haven't seen one that small before.
Okay, I'm probably embellishing for argument's sake, but it was small. I've all the ones that I've used have always been, you can use them one hand, but they're a lot more controllable too.
Right.
This looked like a slightly bigger block plane.
Okay.
It's really cool. It's
Little
Bosch,
battery powered one.
Mm. Yeah.
They're bloody
really
handy. I've not long had a battery powered plane. We take it on site for trimming toe kicks and scribers and stuff. And it's so much easier than having to run a cable outside and find power and stuff. Sometimes if it's depending where we are, we'll just run into the van and do the planing in the van, keep all the mess in there, and then run up and do whatever we have to do, and we don't have to worry about leads. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's funny what the job site would have looked like 10, 15 years ago with air hoses and wires. That's all a thing of the past now.
Just trip hazards everywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a show, a YouTube channel, one of these Renault shows that I watch. They're quite closely linked to, I don't know if you guys know Crafted Wood Shop, Johnny Brook.
Yeah.
Right, so they've done work with him before. And they were putting down flooring. It was rough sawn oak flooring. It was for a shed, so they were just shooting their main, I don't know, whatever the framing nails are. And the airline gun couldn't get through, but the DeWalt battery-powered one, not the pass load either. The pass load also struggled. The DeWalt battery-powered one was the only one that could get through it.
Yeah, well,
which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, I know. Pass loads, even though it's a gas explosion, they don't like hard stuff.
Oh, right. Okay, I would have thought the pass load would have been the one to go with, because that's been around for a million years.
It makes more sense, but I mean, you hit a knot or something, it's just not going to go through some stuff.
Yeah.
It's surprising that the battery one has got more grip.
Yeah. Anyway, we're a woodworking show. We're not carpenters. So, with that in mind, before we get into that, Brian, how's your last couple of weeks been?
Pretty good.
Before we get into the topic.
Lots of quoting, lots of designing, a little bit of woodworking. I've been working on a bed that's hopefully going to go out next week, and then I've got a nice run of little coffee tables that I'll be working on concurrently, and then I have a dining table to do after that. So a reasonable amount of work, not crazy. Like, I think people are starting to feel the pinch a little bit. Like, the inquiries that I've had have been things that have been in the running for sort of 2 to 3 months. But yeah, it's sort of gone quiet a little bit. Website traffic's down, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting, because usually this time of year is like, it's that weird thing with tax time. Like, everybody panicking, I've got to get it in so I get my money back from the tax man. It's like, you realise the tax man doesn't actually give you money back. This is your money you're still spending. But yeah, like, I got a couple of sort of small little government jobs and things, and that is obviously money that expires because they're having to do their annual grant applications and all that kind of stuff for the different departments. But yeah, I find it so weird when businesses lump on in mid-June and say, can we just pay for it now and we'll take it in September?
Yeah,
it happens every year except not this year.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But-
I've never had that kind of rush.
Haven't you?
before.
Maybe it's an Aussie thing.
Yeah.
And I got
people
my
talk about
I got
the-
my Aussie passport as well, so that's exciting. I came through today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You were talking about your website traffic. Do you notice a direct, and this may be a silly question, and I'll validate it in a second, but do you notice there's a direct link between the amount of work that you're getting and your website traffic? Or is there not really a correlation?
I know what a good month of traffic is, and it will, like, I can see the number of people that go to the contact form. It won't necessarily, like, because I don't need a huge number of clients. Like, I just need probably, I don't know, 6 inquiries converting into 3 to 4 jobs, something like that. So it's not like I need a massive number, but I'm always wary of looking at it and looking at how they're arriving on the website, whether it's like directly searching Sawdust Bureau versus searching furniture Melbourne or something like that. I used to be really, really up on SEO and take the time to like put keywords on every single photo and tag it and stuff. And then there was just one year where it made no difference. Going to all that effort and it's literally just people buying AdWords. So
yeah, the reason I ask is because it feels like the age of websites are no longer. It's not, websites aren't as powerful as they used to be maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
no, I agree. Yeah.
And so I've often thought to myself, because I've got a website, and I've often thought to myself, do I even need it? It's a great place to show your work to someone. You know, if you want to recommend or if you want to display your work to someone, head over to my website, you can find it. But from a generating business perspective, I've always questioned if it was
I think
worth it.
If you're somebody who's got good IT skills, or you've got the money to pay somebody to do it, if you can set up an online shop where it means, rather than like my website, because I do a lot of custom work, it's like an inquire now button, as opposed to, I'm pretty sure Like Butter have gone fairly automated. Well, no, and Jem probably has gone fairly automated with his website. So I think you can say, I want this kit of parts, I want this number of shells, bish bash bosh, here's a quote, where do you live, here's your shipping quote, done. And then you don't have to do anything. There's no phoning around freight companies. Like, that is when a website becomes super powerful. But for me, it is just a portfolio, really. But I still do get inquiries from it that translate into jobs, and I don't think I would get as many if I just ditched it and relied on social media. Or
I think these days websites are more of a qualifying step.
Yep.
And I think, because you mentioned just before, let's use these numbers for example, like 6 inquiries and 3 converted jobs.
Yep.
There's a 50% conversion rate. That's massive. I think if you talk to most marketing people and you're telling them you're getting a 50% conversion rate, they'll be like, well, we don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
What's your secret?
Yeah, what's your secret? And I've had this conversation with other people before and said pretty much the same thing. My conversion rate's about 50% once I get an inquiry.
Yep.
And I think it has to do with the people are using your website as maybe they're qualifying their own fears, or just going to crossing their T's and dotting their I's, doing their research, and by the time they've seen you on all the other platforms and linked through to everything, and then they come to your actual website and go, right, yeah, this is the guy, I want to get this guy to do some work, and they send through a form from your website. I mean, you're pretty close to having the job in the bag at that point.
Yeah.
I find that most inquiries straight from my website end up becoming jobs, because these days, more than they used to, because I think people use it as like a last step qualifying.
Joey, do you show pricing on your website or not?
I used to have indications.
Yeah.
And then it was like, it's so custom. There's so much variance, and the price of things kept going up, and I kept putting my own price up. And so I said, oh, well, I don't want to give people a really low ball number on the website, even as an indication, and actually it's 20% more than that now.
Yeah.
So
it took me a lot. I
Yeah,
had
you
to
don't
go
know
through.
where you're going to be.
I had to go through when I increased my prices the other day. I had to go through every product and work out the price increase.
yeah,
It took
that's
me
what I
about
didn't like.
4 hours, I reckon.
Yeah.
5 hours to do every single page. But
And over the years, I'd have pricing from jobs that are 8 years old or something.
yeah,
And I would just, as I upgrade my website or whatever, I would just not do anything about the pricing.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, fine, whatever, just transfer it over.
yeah.
But then when you look at it and you're like, oh, a pair of chairs for $800, that's like, nope. Delete that off there, and it, like, that's not going to happen.
But I find that is probably one of the reasons where that leads to a high conversion rate is having the pricing on my products, because the old days when I used to pay for like Facebook ads and things, the amount of bullshit inquiries, I would, like absolute tire kickers, people saying, can you make a 8-seater dining table? I've got $600. Whereas I find that not paying those adverts and just letting people organically find my website either through social media, Pinterest, whatever, that they're clicking through and they see it, and at least, even if it's a custom job, at least they know a dining table is going to cost them between, I don't know, $5,000 and $8,000 or something for a 10-seater, 8-seater dining table. It's not like they're coming there with any expectations that aren't managed.
Yeah, I agree. I think pricing can help. I just don't like the fact that you have to keep updating it, especially at the moment where things are updating.
You just stick a
weekly.
from before the price.
Well, that's what I used to do, but
Yeah.
even then I felt like I was lowballing people if they come in with this expectation.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, actually, God, prices have gone up so much now.
Yeah.
These prices aren't relevant. So
And your quote's going to be very indicative of the workload that you've got, which obviously is...
possibly.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe we shouldn't make that public, but it could be.
It could be. I mean, it could be. I mean,
If it's moving a job to the front of a queue or something like that, yeah, you will pay a premium for that sometimes.
I just can't really do that anymore. I mean, I used to say that I wouldn't do it, and I don't think I ever really did. But at the moment, with the jobs I've got on, it's like everything's very calendar centric, in that I have to have certain things done by certain times, assuming that other people are going to have their parts of the job done, like builders, etc. And I'm just kind of ploughing on, assuming that those timelines are still to be met. So pushing people forward and back is pretty tricky.
Yeah.
Right, Robin, talk us through what you have got going on.
Yeah, so...
Firstly, have you invested in a heated vest yet? Cause
you know what? A heated vest?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm rough. No.
Oh, man, best thing ever.
Actually, I've seen these advertised
I feel
before.
bad
It's a little...
talking to you two when one of you's in Tasmania and the other's in New Zealand, but yeah, it was freaking freezing.
I've seen them, so
in
it's a little battery pack,
Yeah.
that you can... Is it rechargeable?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're usually Milwaukee. I think the ones I've seen are Milwaukee branded ones.
Yeah, Milwaukee, DeWalt, they'll kind of make them.
Yeah.
But game changer.
Yeah, right. I was thinking of getting one for my wife because she struggles with the cold.
Thanks. That makes me feel better, Robin. Thank you.
But her response was along the lines of, I don't like the idea of having a toaster in my jacket, which, if there's a malfunction, is essentially going to roast me from, kind of like an electric blanket for a bed. I can't do it. I wouldn't be able to sleep comfortably with one of those fire hazards underneath me. Thanks very much.
You've been surviving the... You had a wee bit of snow in Hobart? Or in Wellington?
Last week. Yeah, last week was properly cold. Where we are, it's obviously, we're at the bottom of the mountain, so it's not so bad. But we've had snow sitting on the mountain for about 2 weeks.
It's still there?
And when the wind... I think it's probably now starting to disappear.
Yep.
But when that wind comes off the mountain, it is bitterly cold. And but that's the experience.
That's Tassie.
That's why we moved to Tassie.
Yep.
It's all part and parcel.
And are you getting back into the shed? Have you've done your induction, right?
I have kind of given up on the shed, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Bombshell.
It's nothing against them.
Yep.
I've got nothing but love for the guys that I met there. They were very cool. But I wanted a shed where I could walk in, sign a piece of paper that says if I lose my fingers, it's on me, and then get to work. But they're it's a very social thing.
Yeah.
It's that orientation, which I'm not the right person for that. And the last time I was there, I was working on the machines, and I said to one of the guys, now can I use the thicknesser? Can I go ahead? And he said to me, one of the mentors, well, it's really about whether you feel confident or not. And I didn't say it at the time, but I got home and I thought, well, that was dumb, because I'm waiting on you guys to give me the go ahead.
Right.
And so I just kind of walked away going,
that's a weird comment when it's probably one of the safest pieces of machinery in the workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I was giving off a very unconfident vibe that I didn't look like I didn't know what I was doing. But I just thought, I could stick with it, but it's a lot of time and effort to get to a place that I already am.
Yeah.
And it's not a fun experience. But as luck would have it, I spoke to Laura not too long ago, and she mentioned a place called Design Objects Tasmania, which is a similar thing, but there you rent a space.
Yep.
That's cool.
So Bryan, I'm guessing it's something that you would have come across in Melbourne. You go in, you do an induction. Everyone seems a bit more, it's less about the social and it's more woodworking.
Yep.
The people are woodworkers and designers. Amazing pieces. Duncan Meerding is a member there as well. And you go in, you sign up, you get your space, and then you're off to the races.
So shared machinery workshop, and then you have your own kind of walled off space. Is that the way it works? Or?
So it's a shared workshop, and then you can get a studio space.
Right. Okay.
Which I don't need the studio space, but it's a shared shop. And then for the first 3 months, you have to go in when someone else is on site.
Yep.
So you've got to essentially message around to say, is anyone in? Come on. And then after that, you get a key.
Excellent.
It's 24-hour access. Only snag, the men's shed is there. The Design Objects is in, or DOT as they call it, is in Hobart, right in the middle of Hobart.
So what's that round trip for you?
It's a 20-minute drive there.
Oh, it's not too bad.
It's not bad, but the feeling of driving from here to Hobart is quite fine, because I'm going to be using it in the evenings. It's going to be a couple of late nights if I decide to go ahead. But I'm hopefully meeting with them next week as part of my induction, and then we'll see from there.
Cool.
And all of that is on the back of me getting a potential commission, and that's what we wanted to talk about tonight. So I've got a potential built-in shelf system that a client is looking for. I don't like doing built-ins. I'd much rather be doing a table in my workshop. Joey, you've obviously got heaps of experience with it. It's not my thing. And I wanted to pick your guys' brains about it tonight, because not only am I looking to quote this lady, if I even go ahead with it, I don't have any tools to do it. So, just to give everyone a bit of a background, Joey and Bryan have already seen the piece. It's a fireplace in the middle of a wall, and on either side they want plywood shelves. It's that sort of eccentric looking shelving on all different sizes, and the edges are displayed. The edges of the shelves are displayed, and it's some kind of plywood, presumably birch, and then the insides are painted a dark charcoal, something like that, and it's all over the place. Some of the criteria: it's a 3 meter high ceiling, and the space is about 1.3 wide.
I guessed it perfectly.
Well, because it was so funny. So Joey sent me a drawing. Thanks again, dude. That's amazing that you just threw that drawing together. That was awesome.
Well, yeah, I spent 20 minutes on it, and 15 minutes I was just trying to draw the room, and then I spent 5 minutes drawing the bookcase.
Yeah. So it's 1.3 wide, 3 meters tall, which is we'll get into in a second. It's going to present some challenges, and there's molding around the wall. So I've just got a couple of questions, so I'll get into the first one, which is just about the room itself. Joey, in your experience, if you've got molding on the wall, do you cut that out, or do you work around it?
I would, but you shouldn't be going that high, in my opinion, unless they specifically want you to go to the ceiling.
They do want to go to the ceiling. So now I can go to her and recommend that we stay below that, which would definitely be my preference. But if she wants it to go to the ceiling,
okay. So the problem is you need to explain to them, because let's explain. You've got the ceiling, which has a little, what I'll call scotia, a little molding between the ceiling and the wall, and then what they've done, I don't know what the official term is, but they've extended the white of the ceiling down the wall 300 mil and have a picture rail running.
Picture rail, that's what it's
around
called.
About 2.7, something like that from the floor. You don't really want to cross over into ceiling territory. If you have to run it right to the ceiling, you need to explain that ceiling, that scotia or the molding that runs in the corner of the ceiling or wall has to then come around the front of your cabinet. Like you have to change the way the ceiling looks. You can't
delete into the cabinet because it's too big.
Delete it. I mean, it's going to look really odd. It has to be in that style. It has to be built in the front of the bookcase and allowed for. And that's a whole other job that you don't want to know about, because you're then into repainting part of the ceiling. Yeah,
right. So you would have to repaint a portion of it, and then it turns into the whole ceiling.
Well, probably. It's very hard to patch a ceiling. You could just about get away with it if you just paint the scotia part and don't touch any part of the flat ceiling. But I would be that's kind of secondary to the fact that you're using plywood, which is only 2.4 meters long, and you don't really, even though you're going to probably have to put a joint somewhere, you don't want to have to really deal with going above that height. I wouldn't think 2.5 would be, if you have 2.4 meter high cabinet with a 100 mil toe kick, that's 2.5 meters. That's just underneath the picture rail. That's where I'd be calling it. Otherwise, it's going to look really weird. That style of room, it needs this. There needs a scotia around the ceiling properly. Yeah. So I'd be saying, I would say thanks, but no thanks if they really want it up to the ceiling.
Well, that was what my gut was saying. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective with the scotia, which makes it a lot more reasonable to argue that this is a bad idea to do it.
It's a pain in the butt. I've done it, and it's another couple of days work where it's not even work that you really want to do. It's carpentry work. Yeah.
So you mentioned the plywood is 2.4 meters. That was going to be one of my next questions. Not being someone who, I don't buy sheet goods very often, is 2.4 it? Do they not make it any bigger?
No, you can. There's a few suppliers in Melbourne you can get 3 meters from. You'll be limited in the kind of finishes you can get on it. So if you were looking for a custom veneer or something, it would have to be put on over the top of it. But you can definitely buy 3 meters. But 24/40 is sort of standard.
Gotcha. 24/40. Okay.
Yeah, they allow 24 to trim it down to 2.4.
Damaged corners and things, so you just trim them off.
Okay. And so you mentioned there, Bryan, with different finishes. Do you think it would be reasonable to get a finish on this already, or is that going to jack the price up substantially?
Not substantially, but it'll just cost you a little bit more. If you're talking about adding it to a 3 meter board, it might cost you a bit more than getting that standard veneer applied to a 24/40 board instead of a 3 meter board, because it's something that won't be sitting in their warehouse. It's something that they'll have to make specifically for you.
I'm talking more about instead of painting the internals.
Yeah,
right. 100% get the finish on it. Either a film or a stain or something. Get it on it.
Yeah, it'll be an HPL finish, but you want a high pressure laminate finish on birch ply.
Yep.
You're probably limited in colours, probably only black, grey and white, so they want black anyway, be a matte black. And you don't want to paint birch ply and have to try and mask off all the edges or then sand all the edges perfectly off after they're painted or something crazy. Like, you just want to cut it with like a track saw or something like that, screw it all together, throw a back on it and put it in place. All your work will be most of the work will be actually installing it, because those walls won't be plumb. So
was one of my next questions. Now, would you, obviously I'm going to go there first and look at the space and measure it out.
take a level.
Is it, and now you've been doing this a lot longer, Joe, than I have, but so you've got to the point now where you're happy to say, I've taken my measurements and those are the measurements. I'm completely confident in them. Would there be... Well,
I'm never confident, but I take the measurements.
Would there be any reason to build this on, or not necessarily build the whole thing, but to put this together on site to try and get around those walls? Because ultimately, if there's bows in that wall or any undulations, how would you explain that to the client, that you're going to see those gaps?
You don't talk to the client too much about the gaps. You need to explain to them that their walls, and if you have a level with you, you can hold the level up and say, look, this wall is running off 20 mil, so we're going to do our best to make the cabinet fit. There could be some gapping issues depending on things, but never say never, but I'm going to try and make it look pretty for you. If you have a substantial runoff, like anything over kind of 10 mil, you just need to explain to them that they're possibly going to see you've got very straight lines on the edge of plywood, and when you start trimming that away to fit against the wall, you're going to notice that a piece of plywood goes from thick to skinny, depending on how you've had to cut it to fit the wall, and it's going to look like something's off, but actually your cabinet's straight and the wall's not.
But sorry, you wouldn't trim the plywood. What do you mean by that?
Okay.
As in,
What have I got?
you're not actually, because in my head it sounds like what you're saying is you are like running your board through a thickness planer, or your plywood through a thickness planer.
Yeah.
Surely I would have just gone with extending the shelves width so that the plywood is on a slight angle to match the wall.
You never get it in. So the first thing about built-in cabinetry is you've got to lose space. You're not going to have a cabinet that fits in the exact space with a mil to spare. You're going to build a cabinet that is 36 mil too short. You're going to have an 18 mil gap on each side. Put the cabinet in, nice and plumb and square, and then you're left with a gap down each side. That's the scriber. And that piece of plywood only has to be 60 mil deep, something like that. Just big enough that you can squeeze it in there on edge.
Fix into it.
It's not going all the way back. It's just a filler to fill the gap, and you plane that to fit whatever wedge is left between.
Okay.
And that is what you're going to see runoff on. And that's why if you look on the drawing, everything is quite wide. All the verticals are drawn 36 mil wide, and anywhere where there's a join between two cabinets is going to look like two layers of plywood coming together. So you sometimes have to build in the fact that if you're going to split a cabinet into 2 or 3 pieces just so you can maneuver it into the room and then lift it into place, you've got to think about where those joins are going to be are going to look beefier, and so you've got to add some of that beef somewhere else in the cabinet to make it all look like it should be like that.
Little shadow gaps. Little 5 mil shadow gaps or something like that.
You could do that, or
like a strip of ply or something set back that sets the cabinets off each other is a really good way to deal with that. But
that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea. Now with that scriber, because I had traditionally you would do something like that with normal framing. If you when I built my closet in my place up in Townsville, the framing around the closet where it was met the wall, that all got scrubbed. But surely with something like this, with plywood, where you've got these straight lines, there's going to be an expectation on their side that the wall is going to be all over the place, and that's fine. You can have that gap, and that's okay, because you can't expect, that's just for argument's sake, and this is based on the picture, that wall looks like it could be a 1950s wall. Brick render. that's never going to be flat. So surely the idea of having this wonky janky wall with a straight piece of ply for the shelf, there's going to be no expectation to scribe a filler in between there.
That's between you and the client. Like it's something that's very I would even take a scrap of plywood, something like that. It's like a piece of wood, and hold it against the wall and just say, "Do you like that or not?" Because I mean, if you want, depending on how far you want to go, you can just slam a piece of wood against the wall and kind of masking tape off the gap, fill it up, and paint it. That's one way to do it. It's a bit not so easy with plywood because you've got to deal with natural timber and cork and colour and paint colour and everything. It becomes a bit trickier than just scribing it. One option when you really have wonky walls is just to build the cabinet, not like on purpose build it too small for the space. Don't go wall to wall on purpose. Leave yourself a breathing room on one side, like a 300mm, stop 300mm from the wall or something. And you could design it symmetrically like that. So each side doesn't actually go wall to wall. It just has to touch the back and one side of the wall.
So in this case, the center fireplace is where everything locks in, and then on either side, space for an umbrella.
And maybe even just at the bottom it touches, and then it kind of pyramids
Steps
up.
back,
It steps up somehow because they want to. They don't want to really that modern style shelving where nothing's in line. You could actually just make it look like it's meant to step away, but actually it's just helping you in the fact that you don't have to fit it between two awful walls.
That trim piece that Joey's talking about that you use to sort of shim the cabinet back to the wonky walls, that'll help you get away from any skirting boards as well, Robin. Like if you're trying to, depending on what type of hinges you're dealing with, whether they're like full overlay, half overlay, whatever.
No doors.
No doors, just all open. Okay, not to worry about that.
Well, I hope so.
If you imagine, if you're trying to say you're using 18mm ply or something, is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, well, this was actually one of my questions. Would you guys be going anything less than 16 on that? I don't know.
It depends on the span of it and whether it's going to sag and what's going to be, if there's something heavy in it, like if it's holding vinyl records or something like that, they are heavy as all shit.
This is an interesting conversation because it's like my daily at the moment, like working this kind of stuff out.
And that's why I wanted to. I just thought this is the best idea because I literally said to her, "I'll get back to you on Wednesday next week," knowing that the show was tonight.
This is one of those things we've talked kind of about before, Brian, and I think you work this way. Is that if you know you have to do something with hardware in it, you start with the hardware and work backwards.
Yep.
What can the hardware do and achieve? And in this case, your constraint is like, what is the finish? What can I get? You can only get an HPL finished plywood on 18 or 25mm thick birch. So there's your answer. I would go for 18mm because 18mm stacked up next to each other is 36, and that looks better than two 25s, which will give you 50.
Yep, gets
depending on how
chunky.
you're gonna. Yeah, because the way this is going to go together, you can't lift it in by yourself in one piece. If you break it into three, you might be able to do that. Lift each piece in by yourself in three different cabinets. That's probably doable. And so you've got to think about what's it going to be made of. And in this case, having a pre-finished plywood is so much more economical than trying to paint just natural birch. So you're kind of constrained by that, and then you say, what can I kind of lift? Where do I have to put cut points in the cabinet? And then after that, you start making the design look pretty. So 18mm can take anything. It doesn't matter what they put on it.
Yeah, the boxes, let's call it, were actually quite narrow. So 18mm span, I wouldn't think that's going to be an issue. Okay, cool. That's good so far. Just trying to think what else. Oh yeah, okay. So that's the design. Now I have currently in my possession here in Tasmania a drill, and a circular saw, and that's that. Would I be able to get away without using a panel saw for HPL? Joey, or maybe not a panel saw, but at least a table saw. Is this just gonna be a nightmare trying to do this with a circular saw?
You could probably do it with a track saw pretty good. The track saw blades seem to give no tear out, from what I've seen, like very little tear out.
Are you trying to do mitered corners and things on the boxes, or are you happy for it just to be butt joints?
I think it's all butt joint.
All butt joints?
Yeah, I'll just butt joint, yeah.
Because
that's why in my head, if
I would go with track
if
saw.
I just used that, if I did a track saw, because in my head this is what I need. Obviously a level, because I've literally got to go shoot out to Bunnings and go buy all this stuff. So a level, I would splash out on one of those laser measuring things. Brian, I think you've talked about them in the past. Because that just, in this type of instance, if it's going wall to wall, that's going to be an absolute
It tells you
no-brainer.
instantly whether your wall is out. It won't tell you which wall is out, whether it's the left or the right, but it'll
That's the
tell
level,
you
yeah.
there is a 20 mil gap at the top.
So if I was to do level, laser, I'll get a simple doweling jig, because I'm pretty sure I should.
Screws.
How am I going to cover that up with the...
Oh, that's something else you have to think about.
So would you say rather go screws, don't waste your time with the... Obviously, if I had a domino, that would be a lot easier.
Maybe a doweling jig. I don't know. It depends on... That's where sometimes you just need to get smart creatively with where you cut the piece.
Because screws would obviously be easier.
You can
because
hide
lined and
screws very easily. Like if you've got two boxes that have to come and sit on top of each other, like this, anything between those two layers is not seen. So you can have screws up this way and screws down this way, and then put them together. Doesn't worry. You're never going to see that.
Yeah, well, the screw's got to come through the box.
Yeah, but if it's a 2.4 meters or something like that, and you're screwing down and eye levels like 1600.
Oh, yeah, okay. So at the bottom, if you're screwing up, you're not going to...
Yeah, you can put the screws selectively, and to a point where you might only need one or two connections, where you might have to use something like a dowel jig.
A dialing jig though is cheap. Like it's not not a big expense.
It's only $50 or something.
Yeah.
Which is why I was thinking of doing it.
Yeah.
But my concern with those doweling jigs is, and I've always found this in the past, for example, where I'm talking about the boards, you were saying the three different cabinets meeting, those doweling jigs, because they don't have positive stops, you're always like risking that, you're always running that risk of it being a mil over or something, and it's going to look awful if it does it. You can sand it back to a degree, but I don't know. That's my experience with doweling jigs. It's not a domino, which has a very positive stop. You get it in the same spot every time.
I think there's a way to do that particular design without a doweling jig. I think you could probably do it with all screws, and you wouldn't see any screws.
I'll look into that because I'd be more confident doing that anyway. All right, so level, laser, track saw, which I can just make my own.
So what you will probably get is very small chipping on the HPL. What I typically would do is get a very small router and have like a 2 mil round over bit, and after you cut all those faces, just run a router along it, and it just takes that sharp edge off the HPL laminate, and you just round it over slightly.
Assuming that the HPL doesn't break under the blade.
If it's a sharp blade.
A good HPL,
okay.
The HPL should be about 1 millimeter thick, like on that stuff.
I've never worked with it. I just assumed it was a brittle, like melamine.
No,
It's not as bad as that.
No, it should be actually really quite hard, and should work about the same as the plywood.
Right.
Depending on kind of what it is that you buy, but if it's the stuff, I think what is available for you, which is pretty much the same as what's here. There's a HPL, a high pressure laminate, and there's a CPL, a continuous pressure laminate, and the continuous pressure laminate is a thinner, more melamine type finish, which is typically cheaper, and the HPL is a thicker laminate, which is more hard wearing, and typically a bit more expensive, but it's a better product.
Okay.
Have you ever used a track saw before, Robin?
No, not a pre-bought one. We've talked on the show about getting I was toying with the idea of getting the DeWalt track saw. But I've always just made mine up myself from MDF. It's quite simple to do it. Well then I guess that's all the kit that I'd need. I mean the router, you get a cheapo.
You could get a cheap router, and I'd be almost inclined to buy like a Makita or a Ryobi kit, like a battery tool kit, where you get a few tools and a bag and a couple of batteries. You can probably get everything you need cheaper that way sometimes. Like you get a set of drills and a router or something. Sometimes you can make your own kits up for a certain price.
Yeah, righto. Yeah. Because keep in mind that all of these, with my long-term plan of leaving Tassie next year, if all goes to plan, all of this stuff's got to go. Because I'm not going to put in the car and drive. I mean, I might, but I probably won't drive this back up. So that's why I don't want to invest in tools. Particularly, this is all under the assumption that I'm going to be doing this at my house. If the membership at DOT goes ahead, I could be on a panel saw doing all of this, in which case it's easier. But I'd much rather be able to do it at home, take my time, instead of being on a hourly basis at some workshop.
Well, the good thing with this type of bookcase, you literally just take a sheet and cut it into like 300mm strips. So let's say you work out that you need 6 sheets. You cut them all into 300mm strips, and then it's just a matter of going through and cutting them the right length to screw them together. It's very basic cuts. So pretty straightforward, and there is going to be a bit of investment there, so you'll have to do the numbers obviously to see if it's worth your time.
Well, this is where all the profit from the job can go. It's paying for the tools that I'm going to use. I was just going to say, we talked briefly about having a gap on each side of the cabinet. Be sure to allow that same for the back. The back wall is just as likely to be all up the shit. So in a case like this, in an old house, I'd be 20mm off the wall, 18mm off the wall as well, with your back panel. So you're not touching on 3 sides at all. It's just 2 bits, 2 little scribers touching at the extreme sides, and then to make it look like it's filling the space completely. Then, at the back as well, scribing the back.
No, sorry, you wouldn't scribe the back. There would just there would be an 18mm gap completely down the back, and you probably need all of that.
Yeah. Then in terms of attaching it to the wall, do you guys have any preferred methods that you would do that? Because obviously, again, you're trying to cover the fixings. Up at the top would be what I would assume. Just
above a shelf, above eye level, you can get a screw in where you can't see it from standing level. And
a little L bracket.
No, just a screw straight through it all the way into the stud or whatever's there, brick wall.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
And all you have is a screw head left sitting there.
Yeah, okay. And then talking about back panel, something thinner on the back.
You won't get it.
Yeah, okay. Because I know, Joe, you've talked in the past about you just do the backs or the sides. It's all the same.
Yeah, I do now. I used to...
Oh, do you? You do the same thickness for...
Yeah, for backs. Because... back when I used to paint everything, it didn't matter, and I could use a thin back panel. Because you think about what the back's doing is creating a diaphragm, stopping everything wobbling around. So it doesn't have to be that thick. But it does mean you've got to work with and stock different thicknesses of material. And sometimes, like on kitchens, you just want a small offcut of something to finish something off, but it's the wrong thickness. And it's much easier if you have one thickness panel in the workshop, and you can use that offcuts for all sorts of different things. For example, if you're doing a kitchen cabinet, it's like 760 tall or 780. What is it actually? It's 7 something. So it's most of a sheet. The offcut is about 400mm. So if you take a 1220 sheet, rip 700 off it, that's the back panel of a kitchen cabinet, right? And then you've got this 400mm offcut. which can be used for all sorts of stuff if it's a decent thickness material. If it's some thinner stock, it just goes into a scrap pile and you never use it.
Yeah.
And it makes way better use of your offcuts. The problem with this kind of thing is that it's a very expensive back panel because there's like $300 back panel, and the problem is that you're 1300 wide and not 1220 wide.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I think going back to what you were saying, which is what I'm going to pitch, is bringing it in off the wall. Saves me the hassle, and then gets her down to a single sheet.
I'd come to them with a couple of sketches and say, this is like version A, version B. I prefer version A because this, and this, but we can do version A, but it's more difficult.
Yeah. Righto. And then I'm going to have to hire a van to get it there as well, because I don't have a van. So this lady's either going to be loaded or not interested.
How did she find you, Robin?
What's that?
How did she find you?
Laura.
Ah, cool.
Laura's finished up for the year, and so she said, yeah, if I want to take it, go for it. So yeah, and that's why I really want to take the job, because it's the first job, and then that can become more. So to turn this down, it's going to kill me. But without having a workshop, and I've already explained this to her, I don't want her to be sitting for months and months and months waiting for what, let's be fair, is a very simple job that a full-time cabinet maker would knock out in a week. So, we'll see what she says.
And how's the supplies? Can you get some decent HPL ply where you are?
I haven't even looked at it yet.
Okay.
I haven't gone that far yet. So I'll need to. At this point, all I'm giving her is the yes, let's go further, where I'll start quoting you, or no, this is just not going to be feasible with what I can do at the moment. So
yeah, well, I guess you see if she'll give you a budget too.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
Do some initial pricing just based on round numbers, and then see what you think it might cost to be worth your while, and then see what her budget, if she can give you a budget, and then you can see whether it's even worth spending any more time on it, because that would be what tells you, no, it's not worth it for both of us.
Cool. Righto, thanks guys.
Easy.
Cool.
That's awesome. And to everyone listening, if you want to hear more of this type of thing where we brainstorm quotes, let us know. We can because I don't know, when I thought about pitching this as an idea for the show, I just thought we often talk about high level design or what we're working on, but this is such a very unique thing that people might be having to do themselves.
Well, it is. It's a basic thing that anyone can do, but there's a whole bunch of really basic mistakes that people make, and it ends up looking a bit shit if you don't think about things a bit beforehand.
I would definitely do what Joey was
bouncing
saying.
ideas is good.
I would get a ballpark budget of what they want to spend and work backwards. Because if you're talking about going wall to wall ply, maybe they can't even, by the time you add your labor into it, they can't afford that much material. So then maybe it is just a half width set of boxes that sort of fill the space, and there's an empty section to the right, or maybe just some open shelves or something which you can run wall to wall and sort of easily trim to it, so you're not having to do the complex kind of wall trim on both sides.
Yeah, if you remove that vertical panel and you just have it run out to the side or something. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Righto. Well, I'll let you guys know
have you
how it goes and if I'm going to go ahead with it.
Joey, have you sent Robin your design fee yet?
Well, I'll wait to see what the budget comes out at.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Hey.
All right, everyone.
All right.
Well, that's brought us perfectly to time.
Cool.
So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Very good.
Catch
See ya.
you later. Cheers, guys.
Bye.